All right, the purpose of this video is just to review a little bit of background information about the Supreme Court. As we've talked about, the court system is made up of both the federal and state courts, but we're going to spend most of the focus, as is the focus of the AP test, on the Supreme Court. So this just goes over a little bit of background information about the Supreme Court and its setup. So it's important to note that there's no mentioning of an exact number of Supreme Court justices in the Constitution. Remember, Article 3 is by far the most vague, and really the Founding Fathers left up to Congress to fill in like a lot of the gaps that are missing in the details of Article 3. So there is no mentioning of an exact number. Um, the initial number of Supreme Court justices is 6. And then that number changes throughout history. It's reduced to 5 in 1801 by an act of Congress, and then it's sort of fixed at 9 in 1869, and it's been 9 justices ever since. But because there is no mentioning of an exact number, from time to time, and this brings up an argument over, you know, presidents and Congresses that would like to adjust this number to kind of suit their own benefits. Probably the most famous example of this occurred in 1939. President Roosevelt, Franklin Roosevelt, was experiencing some judicial setbacks to some of his programs to pull the country out of the Great Depression. The courts were blocking some of these programs from being put into place. And one of the things he toyed around with was putting pressure on the Democrats in Congress to propose a bill that would adjust the number of Supreme Court justices and federal court justices. So this judicial procedures reform bill that was on the verge of being proposed would have allowed the president to appoint an extra justice for each one over the age of 70 on the court. A maximum of 6 new justices can be appointed. And this would have obviously tilted the Supreme Court in his favor, and would have allowed it to be his programs to be more easily put into effect. This is what we refer to as court packing. This bill didn't get enough support to go through, and the number stated 9. But like you hear about this a lot. Like this has come up recently. As conservatives on the modern day Supreme Court have taken a decisive advantage, there have been some Democrats that have argued perhaps it's time to increase the number of justices on the Supreme Court with a Democratic president that would allow Democrats to theoretically be appointed, and this would give Democrats an advantage. So because there's no exact number, from time to time, you do have these ideas of like court packing that come up, right? Also, it's important to note that Supreme Court justices have judicial independence. That's the key word. Or, like, really what it is political insulation. Like, how are they insulated from sort of like political stuff? Well, 2 things. They're appointed, they're not elected, and they have life terms. So the intention behind this is to allow the Supreme Court justices to not be unfairly influenced by the other branches or by even like voters. You want the Supreme Court justices doing what is right and what is legally right and what is constitutional and not what is popular. And that's what they have is judicial independence, right? They don't have to worry about running for re-election, and they have life terms, and they're appointed. So again, they're not necessarily going to be influenced by outside forces. And then obviously, it's also important to note that the Supreme Court was not given the power of judicial review, which is what we usually talk about them doing, which is reviewing the actions of the president and Congress to make sure that they're constitutional. This is not something that the Constitution actually gives the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, through John Marshall's decision in Marbury versus Madison in 1803, really gives the court itself like this power. Through this influential Supreme Court decision, the Supreme Court sort of claims for itself judicial review, which it's had ever since. And you can imagine, like, what would the role of the Supreme Court be if it didn't have judicial review? So again, this is just some of the initial background information on the Supreme Court. It's just good to know as we move through the unit.